Is it working now?
Yes, it's working now. Great,
Okay.
thank you.
My apologies. The title of my talk is Washington's New Cold War and the Republic of a Prosecution in South Korea. And I want to start with a quote from Noam Chomsky regarding the role of intellectuals in times of war, and especially those intellectuals in the Western world. In his words, intellectuals are in a position to expose the lies of governments, to analyze actions according to their causes and motives, and often hidden intentions. In the Western world, at least where I am researching and doing my activist work, they have the power that comes from political liberty, from access to information and freedom of expression. For a privileged minority, a Western democracy provides the leisure, the facilities, and the training to seek and truths lying hidden behind the veil of distortion and misrepresentation, ideology, and class interest, through which the events of current history are presenting to us. I want to take this as a sort of a guiding principle of the talk that I'm giving, and especially in view of the fact that the developing new Cold War against China, and in which our country, South Korea, is playing a key part. And to start with that, I wanted to start with the framework of the main point that I want to make. That is 3 points. One is focusing on the United States, specifically US imperialism and related state repression in South Korea. Point one, Biden administration's unrelenting pressure on South Korea to join the US anti-China bloc and its steadfast support for the repressive Yoon administration heightens tension on the Korean Peninsula and threatens South Korea's democracy. Just to give you, there are many examples, but the latest example that I want to give you is that report just 2 days ago, which read South Korea and US stage joint air drills with a B-52H bomber over Yellow Sea. And if you read the article, this is what's happening right now and what will happen this month and throughout the year and beyond. It said with the latest exercise, South Korea and the United States have staged seven combined air drills involving the B-52H bomber. We're talking about nuclear weapons over the peninsula this year. They have staged 12 such exercises this year alone, with US strategic bombers in total. Now, I think this is important. What it's showing is that, as many analysts in the United States point out, that we are actually in the midst of war, preparing for war. So the question we have right now is so urgent, so urgent. It's important, yes, to look at the level of state repression, but this urgency is really something that we should remember. Now, for instance, let's look at the same time. In the midst of this ongoing war game, right, round-the-clock war game that is happening in our country, under Yoon Suk-yeol's 2-year administration so far, 70 Koreans have been indicted for violation of national security law. This year alone, from January to September, 40 have been indicted. If you compare that with the previous President Moon administration, for 5 years, about 112 were indicted for the violation of national security law. So you kind of raise questions. So the reason why I'm putting these numbers in is to think about some kind of causal relations. What is the relationship between this ongoing war game, South Korea, the United States, and now involving Japan, that is a former brutal colonizer of South Korea? And there's this very sharp, dramatic increase of those who are being indicted. It's those people who are working for peace, unification, the workers. It's just all aspects, all works part of the Korean society, including former those public officials who worked for President Moon Jae-in. There's a lot of them who are right now on trial. Pretty much the entire former President Moon's national security team are on trial. And also the chair of opposition party, Lee Jae-myung, who have been received more than 300 raid by the police, etc., etc. So it's very vast, wide. So the question at the same time, what we have is that President Yoon his approval rating has never gone up. Rarely has gone up, I should say, above 40%. He's right now, it's according to the Morning Consulting International poll, it shows that about 19-20%. With Japan's Prime Minister Kishida, it's about, who also have about 20% approval rating. We're talking about the two world leaders with the lowest popular approval rating are right now part of this US-led war against China. So that is a context. That South Korea's far-right President Yoon's engaging in a massive on his opponent and using national security laws and rhetoric to repress unions and activists working for peace and unification. However, most corporate media and intellectuals serving as state functionaries. State functionary means that this is from the words of critical historian, British historian Perry Anderson, who says a lot of intellectuals who instead of focusing on the intellectual independent work basically, it's like a propaganda spokesperson. So if you look at those corporate media intellectuals who serve as state functionaries in this emerging new Cold War, pretty much ignore Washington's support for political repression in South Korea and Yoon's reversion past dictatorial tactics. So that is the main argument that I'm going to make and going to give more details. And in regard to the current, in view of the current, this ongoing war exercise, I want to just give you some of those showing image, how serious, how escalating this tension is. And to legitimize, as a part of this war coalition, I believe that Yoon has been branding critics as communist anti-state forces. So using his words, South Korea's freedom is under constant threat from communist, totalitarian, and anti-state forces. So here, the words that he came up with, this communist, totalitarian, is completely new. Nobody has, so far used it in South Korea, any South Korean president. And anti-state forces who are critical of South Korea's deepening ties with US and Japan. So in other words, those who are critical of this emerging trilateral military alliance between US and South Korea and Japan are considered as pretty much, in his view, as the anti-state forces. The forces, again, Yoon Suk-yeol, in his words, forces of communist totalitarianism have always disguised themselves as democracy activists, human rights advocates, or progressive activists, while engaging in a despicable, these are quite strong words, despicable and unethical tactics and false propaganda. We must never succumb to the forces of communist totalitarianism. So this is Yoon Suk-yeol's words. And it is obvious, it's very quite strong words. And as we will see, I will talk about what the impact of his words are. It has direct impact on those activists and also including the politicians. Now, I did try to raise awareness on that, and I have written op-ed pieces here and there, and this was the one that I wrote in April when Yoon came for a state visit. I argued that this is not in Yoon's repression is not happening in the vacuum. It is specifically as part of US backing of a far-right leader, and which is against the interests of South Korea. And in this op-ed, I argue that Yoon has pursued quite extreme hawkish policies that goes directly against South Korea's national interest. Now, how does, I think earlier I mentioned about the number of increase of arrest for those people who are, who are alleged to violate national security laws. So this is the renewed sort of a comeback of the previous authoritarian military dictatorship tactics. So some of those laws, as you are well familiar with, these national security laws were created in 1948. At the time, as you remember, going back to history, South Korea had a US-backed government military interim regime. And the goal was, it was various in an atmosphere of anti-communist and now emerging then the Cold War. It really created to repress those who were against division, those who are against the US occupation, those who are against obviously the legacies of Japanese brutal occupation. And that is now being is revived more and enacted in more in full force, in my view, under Yoon administration. So for instance, that if you look at some of those people who have been, fighting against this national security laws, which violated a lot of basic human rights and the freedom to express, and they argue basically this law is archaic. It is most draconian, and so therefore there's now not only in Korea but also international campaign to basically demand that repeal repressive national security law. So these are some of the points that the supporters make. For instance, until the laws are repealed, argue that to amend them to limit the application to genuine threat to national security. National security being defined as a very vague, and there's other items such as Article 7 should be abolished because it basically referring to vaguely sort of organizations that are considered against the state. So Article 7 should be abolished entirely because the term itself is very broad, and people can be put into jail for years and years. Article 8 that says, which prohibits making contact with a member of an anti-state organization, again very vague, also ought to be abolished in its entirety. And Article 9(2), which provides more than 10-year sentence for offering any convenience or help to someone who has committed or intends to commit one of the aforementioned broad crime, should be also abolished. So I didn't include all the details about the national security law, which we can go into later. But now, to give you an idea, how has Yoon Suk-yeol administration have been using this national security laws and also other laws to basically to create this national security state to promote this his agenda. Now, as you might be well aware, that South Korean National Intelligence Service have attacked many members of the Korean Confederation of Trade Union Workers. In this year, January, you recall hundreds of police officers just raided the offices of a multiple progressive organization that include 2 million members, right? 2 million members of the KCT that had 2 million members. And the National Intelligence Service, it's pretty much, they had a sort of shock and awe attack on those peace groups. And also they also attacked, they raided 1,000 members of the Korean Construction Workers Union, as you recall. There were now, many of them are right now under federal investigations simply for practicing, right, their constitutionally guaranteed right to strike, promote their interest. And more than 30 workers, right? Workers are in jail. And as you recall, one local KC, Korean Construction Workers Union, died by self-immolation in protest of those charges. And also therefore South Korea, in addition to those peace activists, ordinary citizens who are working for peace and unification, the Yoon Suk-yeol administration has been really exerting this very repressive policy against those workers. And included are also the well-respected peace organization, unification activists who belong to the June 15 committee. As you recall, June 15 committee means that it was founded on in 2000, historic inter-Korean summit, in the aftermath of historic inter-Korean summit. They have chapters, national, and also they have chapters. They also have chapters in worldwide, and to promote Korea's peace and reunification through nonviolent people-to-people exchanges. So even members of the June 15 committee have been arrested on espionage charges. Where I'm referring to those in Jeju province. What is the evidence? One example that we have is they hosted a public screening of North Korean film. Now, so that's just giving you some of the few examples. Now, those of you in Korea, you guys remember the Yoon Suk-yeol was the president's office is going after NBC broadcasting. So right now there's also JTBC, and as the latest the development is that Yoon Suk-yeol's a complete sort of trying to control the KBS. Now, so what I'm saying is that we're not talking about one or two isolated extreme cases. We're talking about completely, we're returning back to 1980s, 1970s, 1960s, where the South Korea's apparatus, repressive apparatus, is now trying to control what people think and also what people can speak. So this is basically the most egregious, most gross violation of human rights and the freedom. In spite of the fact that Yoon Suk-yeol's the most favorite word is freedom and liberty. As you call, whenever he gives his speech, that's his favorite. And many of the speeches that he gave in the national holiday or National Liberation Day, more than 30 words, he says freedom, 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 right? Liberty. And you can see that how hollow that his word is. So going back to the point, if you wanted to have create a real genuine condition, this very repressive national security laws ought to be re-examined and hopefully should be abolished. Now I want to give you just going, as earlier I mentioned, I did write up a short piece on the Biden's support for the Yoon's repressive regime. One news that I read, which really inspired me to write and also organize many webinars about the current condition. This little news that not many people pay attention. This is about a story of Jung Yoo-jin, Director of Education of Gyeongnam Progressive Alliance, is mother of two. And she was arrested on charges of being a North Korean spy, and which she denies. She's a peace activist. She has been working for years, and she was arrested, detained, dragged out of her home in front of her children, and on this again, this obviously for allegation of violating national security laws, and they didn't even allow her to have attorney while they're questioning. So she refused that. So she went into 40-day hunger strike in her protest. And so what this So what this shows, and probably there are probably many cases, probably we can go back to the entire South Korea history of this, it's called since the 1945. We have many instances. The reason I'm focusing on this is because, in part because it says something about the severity of this law, severity of seriousness of this repressive emerging Yoon Suk-yeol administration, and severity and urgency of where Korea is right now as a part of this US-led war against China. So I wrote Yoon's eagerness to prove his administration's worth as a linchpin in Washington's new Cold War in Asia means that there's going to be more repression. This was in April. There has been more repression. There has been more prosecution. And the Washington's backing a repressive political regime under an extreme far-right president whose inexperience in foreign policy and disregard for political norm is ushering in a new era of domestic international uncertainty. This is I included this one. It's about Jung Yoo-jin, who led the hunger strike against the national security, in part because, and those of you who read Korean, and you can, this is handwritten letter she wrote from the detention center, and you can see that more than anything to me, and more than any theoretical discussion, or even more than what I'm saying, it's really telling the truth. She said basically that this hopeless situation where for simply engaging in movement for our country's liberation, our country's unification is considered crime. And that she doesn't even have a good, there's no, she has not, they didn't even give her fair process. Now, and then one point where you can see, I wish I could translate the whole thing, but the thing is there, she says something like, this national security law, which many of us are fighting against it, we thought that now it's just, there's no problem, right? Because but now she said in this letter, she's pointed out that national security laws operate way above South Korea's constitution, as if it's above the South Korea's constitution. That being said, the reason why I include this letter is that it also shows the strong resistance, the spirit of resistance. And specifically, she was able to go on 40-day hunger strike because of those people who are in support of, those people who were doing with her in every step of the way, which I think we should be preparing in this very hard time. So as 300 Koreans, they joined hunger strike in solidarity with Jung Yoo-jin and for her struggle for peace and unification and fair trial. Now, I included this older coverage of the national security law, how it is, as you can see, this was 2000, I believe, 10. The reason I'm putting this is because despite all the progress that has been made, we had the candlelight revolution, we have amazing, South Korea is known for having this Korean just spirited struggle, right? Courageous struggle for democracy. In a way, I feel sometimes we are always, there are forces that are turning us back to the dark era, right? And this is 2010 when article says South Korea should abolish national security law, but we are despite some progress that have been made, and we are to some extent in the same situation, and now it's in the under new Yoon Suk-yeol administration, and also as this emerging new Cold War, we are in a way this repressive law is being used against Koreans' freedom, liberty, and security. Now, just some of those who might be interested in about the origin of a national security law, which I mentioned, it was created in 1948, and we're talking about this is longest, right? Over time, it was also reformed, amended, but it's the bottom line is it is being used. The crux, the main point is still standing, and this is pretty much the relic of a past military dictatorship. some of this article, those of you who can read Korean, you can see how the sharp increase of arrest for violating national security laws under Yoon Suk-yeol administration. And there has been international tension. Korean, and this is regarding to international solidarity to telling Korean government about the Yoon Suk-yeol administration's repression of the workers again, with those laws. And in fact, one point I believe Yoon Suk-yeol even compared the workers' struggle as similar to the threat from North Korea, North Korea's nuclear weapon, which is pretty ludicrous. There's more international attention, and this is the one I mentioned about how Koreans citizens are persecuted for simply watching North Korean drama, which is obviously, if you follow the constitution and rigorously, it is obviously it is wrong. And thus, many eminent analysts, here's the KJ No, he's probably one of the most brilliant Korean American analysts out in the United States. And he wrote this great op-ed piece as a Republic of Prosecution. This title, I took the talk of my title from his op-ed piece, and how he analyzes the South Korea's national security state attacks labor and peace activists. So it is not just our Korean American activists, and it's getting the attention of New York Times. This is the latest article from New York Times that the president's war against fake news raises alarms in South Korea. He calls fake news an enemy. Pretty much, if you look at it, he's the enemy. The scope of his enemies are pretty wide and broad. He says threatens democracy. Critics of President Yoon Suk-yeol say he's a silencing journalist in the name of fighting disinformation. So as you know, this is the preparation for the next year general election for the National Assembly, which is now in the process of controlling the mass media. This is the latest report from Hangul. New KBS chief is racing to deliver Yoon a pro-administration network. You remember those days, those of us old enough to have education under Park Chung-hee, and you remember, right, all the national news start with what President Park did. I think that's what's going to happen, and what President Yoon is doing every day. So this is again, right, that's part of the emerged repressive policy. So much so that New Yorker came up with this article about worrying democratic erosions in South Korea. And there, Tammy Kim argues that pointed out, in recent months, authorities have raided offices of press outlets publishing critical reports on President Yoon Suk-yeol. I have not seen really in the United States any let's say, sort of indictment or anybody charged against those people who are criticizing Biden, saying, you ruined his reputation. But if you look at it, a lot of Koreans right now currently are being arrested or investigated for the allegation of hurting, damaging his reputation. Thus, having said that, though, what does the United States think? What are the elite security analysts in the United States and Washington, D.C., right? And Biden administration, perfect partner for Biden. Yoon Suk-yeol is Biden's perfect South Korea partner. Why? Because President Yoon Suk-yeol administration has been basically part of, right, the triple alliance, Japan, South Korea, and United States, in this new emerging Cold War against China. Now I'm going to, looks like I am a little bit going over the time, in part because of some of the difficulties in the beginning. So I'm gonna pause here and just to give you some of the slides very quickly. in part because I included some of the slides that include my personal, my profession, because I had received prior to this talk from the organizer, I have received some critical questions or comment about my view and also organization that I am part of. So simply to show that I'm a teacher. I taught in the university in the United States for more than 20 years and over beyond. And I just wanted to, I feel that I wanted to show to some extent, right, what I'm doing in a way, my own self-defense. And this is some of the, and I believe that as I mentioned about the, Noam Chomsky's idea about role of intellectual, I'm going further. I feel that this is my personal philosophy. Role of intellectual is to be on the side of those who are oppressed. So that's why it's my personal choice. I always been interested in working for workers and peace activists and those people who are working for unification. And that's where I am. That's what I believe in. And some of those students that we can, just like you guys in university in Korea, and education being important part of this dialogue. And finally, I want to end with saying, what's the meaning of all this? The meaning is this. For me, the vision, that is, I think as a Korean, it's to me, it's the most, it's the worst, it's the most horrifying tragedy that is divided Korea, divided nation. And I hope that whatever things that we do or I'm doing personally someday will help lead to a unified nation. That means that addressing and not forgetting about the tragedy of divided Korea, divided families. And therefore, and in order to do that, I think we have to win the propaganda war that is that sometimes is too strong for us to confront, but something that we must. So let me conclude, because of the main talk was about how some of the South Koreans who are simply working for unification, for addressing the negative consequences of U.S. involvement, U.S. imperialism, and wanting to know more about our brothers and sisters and our people, our Korean in North Korea. Many of them have been prosecuted. Now I want to end this talk saying that I think that prosecuting for people who are working simply for those causes is simply wrong. And this, I want to end this my talk with this picture from, if I believe it's 2018, if my memory serves correctly. As you want to know, there are some Koreans, right? So think about who are North Koreans, who are South Koreans, and there's also many Americans. And you can see this was it's one forum that we had in Columbia University in New York, and we all got together and it was think about the vision of Korea, vision of Northeast Asia and beyond, where we could have create an environment where we can be together. And instead of war, instead of US-led war, instead of this ongoing round-the-clock war game, through dialogue, through interaction, through people-to-people exchange, and by ending Korean War, and by normalizing the relation between the United States and North Korea, I thought we could create another world. Okay, I think I'm going to have to say big apology because it went way over, and I will pause here.
Thank you, Dr. Simone Chon, for your presentation. 네, 감사합니다. Okay, and then Mr. Martin Weiser, you have the floor.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much time do we have. Not much, I guess. So I'm gonna try to be really brief. So you might have already read the introduction on me. So I'm an independent scholar, and one of the main areas I focus on is kind of related to this topic because it's access to North Korean information in South Korea, which is yeah, so basically everyone knows North Korean websites are censored and it's hard to get, but there's not much activism on that. And then maybe that really nicely fits with what Simone told you about, because she talked about the North Korean, the national security law. And so she mentioned some articles that are problematic. I'm just going to try to share my screen, then you can, oops. Yeah. Because then you can see what was not mentioned is it's really funny that the first article has to state of this law that it's not supposed to be abused to so they say unreasonably to restrict fundamental human rights guaranteed by the Constitution. So just if you think about it, to violate a human right fundamentally that's in the Constitution, that's unconstitutional. So you usually don't have to spell that out. So already that is really shows they really have some issue with the national security law that they don't really want to accept even on the legal level. And there was recently the Constitutional Court rejected the demand to abolish like certain articles that are considered by activists and others unconstitutionally. And they said, so at least if you apply it correctly, the law, then there's no issue with the Constitution. And that's the issue, or like the difference I might have. I think the national security law is basically not the problem. It's what police does with it, the intelligence agency, National Security Service. And that's also one thing I tried for 10 years to get a reasonable answer. So why do they censor North Korean websites? And then they say that's for security purposes, because they are afraid propaganda might basically make South Koreans crazy, make them believe lies or propaganda that North Korea just gives out to the world. And then one official in the building of the Ministry of Law told me, like a real public official told me, they're just afraid that South Koreans in the end might like North Korea, and that's of course creating all kind of problems, especially for conservatives. So I'm not sure if there was this personal opinion or that's actually what they really the opinion they have in the office in the whole ministry. But so basically, there's no real legal argument I could find yet, and I'm not sure if you ever tried to access a South Korean website when you're in South Korea. So you end up with this kind of censorship page. Let me just switch to that. Okay, now I get out of this. Yeah, so because like the Zoom is blocking, my link tab. Here it is. So you get to this page and it just says this site is blocked for legal reasons and all kind of things. You can call them, ask, you sure that's correct? But basically you can't get to that website. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about in my part, because Simon mentioned how the US is condoning the current situation, basically this Republic of Prosecution in South Korea. But for me, it's a lot bigger issue because it's not just Yoon Suk-yeol. Before, they did not change the national security law, like in all three progressive governments like Kim Dae-jung, Roh Moo-hyun, and Moon Jae-in. They did not really change anything. And the US basically was a bystander. They never really criticized it. And one really thing that shows it nicely is this US State Department report every year on South Korea. Because, of course, they mention the issues with the national security law. They say, they have internet censorship. They don't allow people to travel to North Korea or maybe even to contact them. So they do talk about it, but if you really look at the details, like I'm showing you the part on internet freedom, so they say, okay, they're blocking DPR propaganda on YouTube and Twitter. This is correct, but they don't really talk about the website. So they say viewing websites is legal, but as you can see, you can't access them if you don't have a VPN, which for even younger people, sometimes they just don't know how to use a VPN, especially older people might not know how to use it. And then even if you use a VPN to access a censored website, many people tell me they think it's still illegal because it's censored, so they should not go there. And if they go there, maybe they get caught by the police, get into problems or anything. And for me, it's a really funny situation because they block this access because maybe they're afraid you can write them emails, you can leave comments on articles and have some kind of exchange with North Koreans. But if you are forced to use a VPN, then they cannot monitor it at all. So they don't know if, basically, because that's what a VPN does, it hides your IP address. They cannot say you accessed this website and said something we really think is illegal under South Korean law. They cannot do that anymore. So basically, it's quite contradictory. And then if you keep reading the one thing I showed you, like posting, they think is illegal under this law, but they don't talk about, so if websites are censored, if you can't get to the information that's on this website, then of course that's a big problem because for every journalist who wants to write about North Korea, you're supposed to see what their media says. Does that match with the facts you have, for example? And that creates lots of fake news. If, for example, South Koreans cannot check North Korean photos they upload on their for their news report, is this one person really there, like Kim Jong-un's brother, or did she disappear? And that happened with Yonhap News. They just read reports, oh, she's not mentioned. They looked at a few photos where she was not, and then they said she disappeared. Maybe she's pregnant, maybe she's not longer in the leadership. But actually she was still there. They just did not check all the relevant photos. Then you have all these kind of what people tend to call fake news because they didn't really check the information they could have on these websites, and then make false journalistic statements. And another thing that happens, of course, maybe they never notice any big news coming out of North Korea. But a more recent example is they just get it really late. Like North Korea changed its election law. They talked about it before. They said they changed the law, and it took South Korean journalists really long, like 2 weeks for a really small outlet to notice it, while a Japanese newspaper that quoted that fact. But not Yonhap News, the national news agency, it took them 3 weeks to just figure out, they wrote in the newspaper, we have changed our election law. Now we have 2 ballot boxes, different colors, where you have to put your vote in yes or no. And we have these pre-electoral competitions of 2 people, which for North Korea is a really big thing, but it took them 3 weeks to even notice. And then, of course, there are many things they just don't notice. And that's one thing I've been... Okay, yeah. Did I talk too long? Okay, so
we're
that's
running a
basically
little
the core
late.
issue
Do you want to close up?
Of access to information, which is not mentioned in the Human Rights Report. And that's where I conclude. Maybe if some Koreans are interested in that or who can read to Korean, I gave a presentation about a year ago with OpenNet. They were so kind to organize that. And especially it's titled Internet Censorship on North Korean Media, and is there no right to know North Korea? And that's in the core. There are many problems with the North national security law, but one thing is if you can't get any information on North Korea, then of course all the discourse, the debate on North Korea and how to maybe have a normalized relationship with North Korea or socialist activists, just human rights unification activists is already not really working from the start. Yeah, that's where I'm going to conclude. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin Weiser. Okay. All right. Now I'd like to open up to the floor. Martin, can you stop sharing? Okay, so that way we can see everyone's faces. Okay, we're gonna open up to the audience. Is there any questions or comments? Martin, can you stop sharing so I can see the full screen? If you have a question or comment, just yell at me. Okay, seeing none, then I can ask the first question. One came from, we got a couple of questions from the audience members. One was, specifically the case of Chung Yoo-jin. I think Simone and Martin, Simone, like the Chung Yoo-jin case specifically. What is the government's evidence that she contacted like North Korean spies? So do you have any like information on that?
I don't have all the detailed information. I think that it was still, because of she's on either on trial or is preparing for the trial, and a lot of information is still on the investigative stage. And she is part of organization that work for, progressive organization that work for unification. And so I think that it's the activities considered, including like those people who are rated, like to members of a June 15th committee in Jeju, who are being investigated. I think it's considered as part of, as a anti-state act. So to answer to your question is, I don't have all the details, but I think that it doesn't really, I don't think, in my view, it doesn't violate any national security law for them, but she's not really at all, North Korean spies, or so I think it's that's what I know, as far as I know.
Okay, sure. But leaving aside the issue of whether Chung Yoo-jin met like North Korean like representatives or not representatives, is it your personal belief, Simone and Martin, that South Korean citizens have the right to talk to, they have the right and freedom to talk to North Koreans if they wanted to, including representatives of the government? So do you think that do you think that South Koreans should have that right? Simone and Martin, what are your views on that?
Yeah, maybe Simone, you can go first.
They should have. I think as we find out that research show that actually the relevance of the national security law is kind of decreased, and South Korea is, as we despite what I said, it is a vibrant liberal democracy, and the Koreans they have very high level of kind of ability to think and decide on themselves, and so I think it is important for us Koreans, especially in the South, to know the truth or what's really happening in North Korea, and the good and bad, and to simply to deny that a right is, in my view, personal view, it is wrong, and also it is not constitutional. And to more, I think it's especially those people and especially those Koreans who have still have family ties in the North. I think it's more critical, and that include also Korean Americans. As you know, 100,000 Korean Americans who have family in the North. And imagine the trauma and the suffering, affliction that they have. I think that I agree with the Pope Francis that this is the worst human rights crisis in the 20th century. Now it's the 21st century. Yes, Koreans should have the right to know and to interact with people in the North. And I think
Okay. Thank you, Simone. Let me jump straight to the next question. Let me share my screen. So the other question that was emailed to me was that another issue for civil liberties in South Korea's criminal defamation law, which have been abused by both right-wing and left-wing, right-wing administrations, but also left-wing. So it has also been abused by left-leaning civic groups to prosecute intellectuals for controversial opinions about the colonial and wartime era, such as Park Gyu-ha and Yoo Suk-yeol. Do you think it would be beneficial for South Korean society and political cohesion if criminal defamation law was reformed to restrict this application, or if it was abolished? Okay, and the second question is, what became of Oh Se-chul, co-founder in 2008 of the Socialist Workers League? Okay, so Simone and Martin, could you address, Simone, could you address one or both of these questions?
That actually, I agree with you. Yes, that on the first question, I agree with it. It should be the criminal defamation law should be reformed, but if not abolished at all. I agree with that. With the second question, I am, the national security laws, this is not my main research area, so I don't have, I must say that I don't have all the details, information about that, but I'll be happy to look into it and then hopefully share my, findings with you and with your members.
Right. Thank you, Simone. Right. Martin, can you address the first or second
It's
question?
also not my, my area of expertise, so I can't really say anything meaningful here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, those were the audience questions that was emailed to me. So let me stop sharing. Okay, so again, let me open up to the floor. Any questions or comments? Again, this is a very important topic, and we hope to post this discussion later on YouTube. Okay, so maybe my students. Okay, come on up and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm from Switzerland, and I wanted to ask, I was at the DMZ at one point, and our guide told us about, no, I meant the cameras. Doesn't matter. Our guide, he told us about his father and how he would take them to the DMZ and during Chuseok, and how he had family over there, but he doesn't remember, only his father did, about the family that lived in North Korea. And it came to the topic that this generation right now is the last one that can remember even having family over there, or just actually remembers the separation without having been told by family members. And I wondered how that impacts, or how you think that might impact reunification in the future if the youngest generation can't even remember having family and isn't as attached to it as the older one. This goes out to everyone, so I don't know who wants to answer that question.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Well, maybe, if I can start. So there are lots of polls about it, or like articles that say it's of course an issue because young people, especially they emphasize, or like the journalists emphasize, that young are more concerned about the economic cost of unification. So why do we have to all like unify or support North Korea if basically it's our money? So that's one issue. And one thing that I'm really that puzzles me is, you have all these divided families, and then the funny thing is on North Korean television there are like hundreds of people shown every week, and of course one day there should be some relative out there on North Korean television, and you can actually see them, like the old especially senior people in South Korea, they would really recognize them, maybe even if it's such a long time ago. And that's not happening in South Korea. So they had, I think, like 20 or even before shows where they try to bring together families, but like this, like basically this big data source of people that you might know is kept from South Koreans. They can't really watch it easily or even legally. And then, so it's kind of, it really hurts even someone who, who's not involved in this or related. It's really a human misery.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, if I might add, I think that I agree with you. I think there's a sense of among young people, the less sort of the interest or knowledge or about the predicament of a divided Korea. And I think I agree with you. I think that's one more reason that we should have more forum like this and emphasize not only the details of our national security law, but it's the big picture. Why is it happening? It is happening in part because of the United States refused to give a peace, refused to have to create conditions for peaceful unified Korea. It is United States imperialism. It is United States military occupation of Korea. Even for the last peace process that we have, President Moon Jae-in, despite criticism and all that, but I personally believe that he did try hard, and but every step of the way was blocked. I want to tell you the best experience I had in my life up to now actually is for that period. For the first time, and I really in my lifetime, I thought maybe we're gonna be a one nation. Maybe this is now we are in this road, in the path, and that was just even looking at the two leaders, Moon Jae-in and the North Korean leader. They, in one place, U.S. president all together summit. That image itself was so special and powerful. And sadly, though, at this point, I feel that's pretty much that has it's almost like a impossible dream. That's the one. I agree with you, young people. It's for you. It's for you. We cannot leave country that is divided for you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from the audience? We only have a few minutes left. Yes, Francis, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for the presentations. My name is Francis. I'm from the University of Western Australia. I'd actually like to ask, on the question of reunification, what sort of lessons do you think can be taken from previous attempts to, successful attempts to reunify in the past, that lessons from that can be applied to the North-South Korea case? The two particular reunification instances that first come to mind are East-West Germany and North-South Vietnam, which of course they're very different, which is why I had hesitations about saying successful, but the end result is that they reunified. How desirable those outcomes were is a bit of a different question. But yeah, what sort of lessons do you think previous reunification processes have for the North-South Korea case?
If I may go first, that's truly an excellent question. Now I have been away from university for some time, so it's amazing how how great the bright the young people are. My quick point is this: both cases are excellent. And Vietnam's case was they did unification, right? And now Vietnam is now part of accepted. Now is having normal relationship with the United States. So the question is, it gives us inspiration. If we have a unified Korea on our own effort, unification first, the United States will have
participated in the Tangerine industry because the income was at the time fairly high. So women may have felt pride with their diligence and ability to raise and educate their children, but they did not want to
interruption. Okay, so what I was saying with the Vietnam's path of unified nation then normalization with the United States, and also one thing. The other part, East Germany is interesting case too. What the key part of East and West German unification is this: East and West Germany, in a way, to some extent, were very smart. They kept their inter-German relationship. Right? They did a very smart strategy. Even they kind of, did a very diplomatic or smart with the United States too. So the nonstop continuing inter-German interaction, rapprochement, paved the way for eventual German unification. That's one aspect. And third aspect is this: it is that important thing for us. What's different from Korea is that the United States have us right now, I think, is the really biggest obstacle, in my view, in our effort, our road to liberation and unification. And that's the reason why we have to create solidarity with the people in the United States, activists, and this is not to just sabotage. This is why we should have more interaction, develop solidarity, scholars, students, activists, and the lawmakers, And so, yes, it's an excellent question.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Go.
Is it
Did
time
you
for a
want to
follow-up?
say something else?
Is there time for a follow-up question?
Oh yes, go ahead.
Oh yeah. I guess sort of following on from the student's question from earlier, then in terms of creating an atmosphere where there is interest in understanding, so creating some sort of mutual understanding between North and South Koreans, do you think that there's that kind of appetite? Because I'm just comparing that to in my own community, the Vietnamese community. It seems like there's a lot of contempt between different groups of, from the Vietnamese migrants who left after 1975. And there's a lot of contempt for people who are still on the mainland. And then, of course, there are different kinds of prejudices between North and South Vietnam. So do you think in Korea there's because there's changing the legal frameworks in terms of making sure people don't get prosecuted for speaking to North Koreans. But then do you think that there's a cultural or social atmosphere where people are interested in that kind of human mutual understanding? Or is there still a lot of suspicion, hostility, even contempt for the one they think is the lower one or the primitive? Or yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
You remember during the inter-Korean, I hope I'm maybe Martin can address too, but during the President Moon Jae-in inter-Korean summit, and during the time, more than there's a survey showed that more than 80% of Koreans supported President Moon Jae-in's effort to rapprochement, and more than 70% of Koreans actually had a favorable impression of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. Now, the point that I'm making is this. Yes, we're all distracted by so many things going on in our life. But the thing is, this is why political leadership is very important. Biden can do it. Yoon Suk-yeol can do it. They have to, in a way, they have a responsibility and duty to create the environment that where, and yes, there are a lot of skepticism, and I myself feel depressed about what's happening right now. But I think that the Koreans will support, right? And that ought to be the engagement. And so I think that all these other feelings may be a little bit, yes, there are, but I think it can be overcome.
Okay, thank you, Simone.
Okay, great. Thank you, Francis. Is there another question or comment? We might have time for maybe one or two more. Any other question or comment? Yell at me. Okay, then I can ask oh yes, KJ, go ahead. KJ, your hand is risen, so go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to respond very briefly to Francis' comment regarding the distinction between North and South. I think that I'm very aware of the differences between the different Vietnamese communities and the antagonisms that they have. And I'm from the Bay Area, so we see this all the time. There's even, different difficulties with accents. Accents will get in the way of people coming together. But in Korea, I would say that the vast majority of Koreans in the South actually have family in the North. And so we don't see ourselves as different or opposed to each other. And I would say that the dividing lines in South Korea are between those who are former Japanese collaborators and those who fought for Korean liberation. I think that is the key dividing line. And I think there you will see that fissure or division, but it's not a North-South analysis. It's really a left-right or a liberator, a traitor kind of analysis.
Okay, thank you, KJ. Okay, is there any other question or comment from the audience? We encourage all questions and comments. Okay, if not, then let me ask the last question. I'm actually very interested in the Korea Peace movement, and I recently joined the Korea Peace Now LA chapter. And because I'm interested in normalizing ties between the DPRK, North Korea, and the United States, recently we had proposals in our chapter to ally with the Comfort Women movement, and also to ally with a campaign against Israel, to protest the Palestinian genocide. And so I was wondering, as somebody involved in the Korea peace movement, what do you think that Korea peace activists should, get involved in issues like this historical issues like comfort women, or contemporary or current issues like what's happening in Palestine? That's my question. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. The broader the alliance and and global, the better. And especially with the issue of that concerning the comfort woman. Comfort woman, this issue is not just the historical issue. We're talking about the military 200,000 mostly Korean underage girls who were forced to serve as Japanese and military sex slaves. Now that it is, although it sounds like a historical issue, but especially right now, it's important because in view of the trilateral alliance that is forged between South Korea and Japan and United States, and specifically that, as you might have heard, that this historic, historic alliance that would never happen, in part because it didn't happen because in the past Japan did not really address this the war crime issue, right? And especially the Abe, the Japan's far right leaders have torpedoed and sabotaged any sort of attempt to true reconciliation. As you know, I mean, I don't have time to go into all the details, but basically Yoon Suk-yeol pretty much gave everything, almost like surrendered, gave everything to what Japan wants, Japan's far right group wants, which is more reason why I think we should pay attention to this issue again. Not only that the military sex slaves, the trafficking of girls, sex slaves, this is a current issue, ongoing issue, global issue. So it's whenever I teach international relations, in fact, this issue is becoming students are very interested in this issue. They get really mobilized, they get motivated, right? So I think it's important, which is why. And then about the Palestine and Israel issue, this is about that issue is about the history of repressed occupation. Koreans, I mentioned that I personally believe that Korea is under U.S. military occupation, and I think that therefore we should also give a lot of solidarity with those people who are experiencing similar predicament and challenges. And yes, so I support. And I think that I think already right now, if you look at the big picture that I was referring to, there is right now, I think KJ can say more eloquently. The big picture right now is we are in the midst of the contest between multipolar, which the global South and China and other countries are trying to develop, and the unipolar, US-led unipolar world that looks like it's going to leading to just this war. So that's where we're right now. So I think in this case, I think it's not only practical but also desirable, and it's a must that we should do all we can to expand our solidarity and alliance with those people who are oppressed in the world. So my answer is yes.
Yes, thank you, Simone. Martin or any member of the audience, do you guys have any final comments or questions? Okay, if seeing none, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everybody for your participation. 네, 감사합니다. Okay.
맞습니다.
Okay. Oh, Nayoung, did you have a question or were you just clapping? Never mind. I think Nayoung's just clapping. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you guys. You guys can go now.